La da 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 da. La da 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 da.
Welcome to the studio this fine summer morning, summer afternoon, summer evening, wherever you are in the world. If you're in the southern hemisphere, sorry I'm distracted, it's a different season. Isn't that crazy? We all live in we're the center of our own universe. It's hard to understand that people are living currently in a different season on this world, which is crazy. So my distraction is that my 35mm Leica lens has just shipped. Don't count this as the announcement, but I'm doing a documentary about Leica Canada because as somebody that's lived in this spot in the world my entire life, I had no idea that Leica had a facility to build lenses and camera bodies like 2 hours from here. So I actually sourced a 35 that had been shipped to Japan probably in 1970 and it's returning now in 2020. So it's 50-year world tour of this lens now returning back home here to Canada, 2 hours from where it was built. That's not what the documentary is about. The documentary is about a whole lot more than that. Maybe now that I say that out loud, that sounds like a nice little thread for the documentary, and it might be added. So thank you for helping. That's not why you're here. You're here to talk about being introverted in a space that is technically, at least appearances-wise, more for extroverted individuals. I will say that as an introverted person, I am very quiet. I am very shy. Unless I really know what I want or what I'm doing, it's very difficult for me to communicate really anything with human beings. That even goes into, like, in this studio right now, if there were people behind the camera watching me, there is no way that I would be able to communicate like this naturally. That's why Tim and I feel like we do a lot of comedy stuff together, because it's just kind of, that's naturally where I feel comfortable when I'm working with somebody else. And then when I'm out, I can't do vlogs, because if I'm out in the streets, like pointing a camera at myself, talking to myself, I feel really crazy and embarrassed for doing that. So I feel like that's the extent of my introversion. Good morning from Manarola. I figured I would take the train to Venice today because it seemed easier and more relaxing. Unfortunately, the train takes like 7 hours, and I could have driven there in 3.5. But anyways, let's go. This is what I call an anti-climactic intro. Usually there's like music and like fast cuts and all kinds of excitement to get you hooked in the episode and through the first like minute. Instead today you're just gonna see all the crap that I take. Welcome to Italy. I think the thing that I'm the most scared about when it comes to the internet is everyone seeing how bad I actually am. That I'm able to package up this content and fool you temporarily, but eventually you're going to see that I'm nothing special, and that I don't deserve your attention, and that I shouldn't even be a professional photographer or video maker or content creator, that I don't even really have anything to say, and I'm actually terrible at being on camera. I freeze if I see someone else while I'm attempting to talk to the camera on my own, and I'm left with like 40 clips like this every single time I shoot a video. That's why I always film alone. I've entered into a realm of something that I was not good at, with the dream to get better, and I thought that I would be better by now. I fear that I'm trying to emulate the people that I look up to, and that I'll never find my voice. I'm looking at them to guide me, and I'm starting to realize that they are just as lost as I am. That on the internet they are the person that you want to become, but behind closed doors, they want to be someone else. No one is ever really happy with where they're at. There is no amount of money or fame that will make anyone happy forever. That if you wanted 8 million and you'd retire on a beach in Costa Rica, when you hit 8, you want 12. It will never end. So what makes me happy? The journey. The process of making something better than last week, and the gratitude that I was able to do it. That I have the health, that I can do this, because I know right now I have 100 problems, but if I get sick tomorrow, I only have one problem. So know that the process and being thankful is everything. That there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and even if you make your millions, your new friends are gonna have a bigger jet than you, and now you're gonna have a small jet problem. And that might seem ridiculous, but I know a dude with a small jet problem, and that negatively affects his overall happiness quite a lot. That's enough of this. Let's go get some pasta. might be the cheesiest pasta I've ever had in my life, which makes it the most delicious. And then to maybe add to that even more, I really have spent the past, I would say, I started YouTube in 2008, I think, is when my account was created, and I made my first video, and it's really taken me up to this point to even get remotely comfortable in front of the camera. So if you're sitting there and you're like, this feels weird, I'm not good, I don't sound like me, I don't look like me, I'm doing weird stuff, I don't know why, I just keep dancing, just know that eventually, if you just keep working on it, I guess that's kind of this is the theme of the video. Let's. I have 5 things for you. 5 things to talk about. It might end up being more than 5 things, but I do hope that they will all be helpful for you if you are an introverted human being. I received a message. So yesterday I posted the posing video, wedding photography posing, and I kind of talked about how, as an introverted person, posing was one of the more difficult parts of me getting into the industry. It attracted some good comments by this man Paul. So I'm gonna walk through them because I feel like Paul is the culmination of all the people that will tell you to never actually do a thing that makes you happy, and they will find reasons and they will tear you down so that you're not following your dream and what you actually want to be doing anymore. You're following the path of least resistance into society and into life, which I guess is fine if you're into that. Paul appears to be into that, but I feel like my life has always been directed by happiness and also time freedom, and time freedom, I guess, buys me happiness. Happiness is kind of a construct, a bunch of different elements. We'll talk about that in a future video. Perma, scale, no, positive psychology. That's not going to be tomorrow, but that'll be eventually. So Paul says, first up, if you're introverted, why the hell are you doing it? It just won't work. So to diffuse that, I can say as a 15-year, I guess, wedding photography veteran, and I would say that most of my friends in the industry, I would say extroverts are actually the outliers, I would say, in the industry. And I'm actually, now that I've come up with this point in my brain right now, I would actually like to play for you a video that no one saw on my YouTube channel that I posted maybe 4 years ago. If you saw it, thanks for sticking around with this channel. That's amazing. If you haven't seen it, which is probably the vast majority, it really does go a little bit deeper into introversion and why it's actually probably better to be an introverted person, because you can learn to be an extrovert. You can, I guess, my thought at least is that you kind of have a tank of that extrovert energy that you can start using if you need to. And during, say, like family formals, you need to get into that mode. During some, maybe posing, if you have an entire wedding party in front of you and they're all just standing like, what do we do next? You're gonna have to use some of that energy, and I feel like I have a limited ability of it. So all the tips I'm gonna give to you today, do the best to maximize kind of the length of time and to make, I guess, your life as an introvert a little bit easier on a wedding day. So Michael says in this video that we did that basically introversion, it's probably better to be an introvert because you can learn to be extroverted, whereas you can't really flip the other way around. That if you're a very naturally extroverted person on a wedding day, well, it seems like there's a lot of people around, and you might feel that's the place for an extrovert. Most of the day, 90% of the day probably, is really spent kind of by yourself with your camera in pure photojournalism mode. You can actually fit into that role a heck of a lot better, and you can do, I would say, a better job throughout the day, more naturally. And the part that's going to be a little bit more difficult is when you actually have to talk to people and communicate with people. So first comment, I think Paul is wrong. I would say that it's better to be an introvert in the wedding photography industry. Next one, Paul says, I'd love to dance like Fred Astaire, but I'm not going to make a career out of it. So I don't know, to kind of break that down, in the history of Paul's life, I guess at some point somebody told him that he can't do the things that he wants to do and that they can't become jobs. I would say quite the contrary, that I have spent a lot of time and effort creating a career that really does make me happy, and that I get to do the things that I want to do. I get to travel really as much as I want, maybe not during the current times, but most years, I get to travel really as much as I want, and I make those opportunities. And no one came to me and was like, hey, Taylor, you should have a travel show. It was like, no, that's what I want to do. So we built out the first season. And again, terrible in front of the camera, but kind of okay if I'm by myself. So those are the first episodes. I just filmed them by myself. Season 2, Tim came in and we started just kind of doing bigger trips. I felt that if you were getting paid to go somewhere and showcase, like, say for instance, our safari in Africa, that you need to bring somebody with you. I can't just be like, hey, thanks for sending us out here. What's up, everybody? I feel like you kind of need another level of polish. So I don't know, looking back in the history, what happens, but I feel like I was pressed against it. I feel like Paul is kind of the culmination of all the people that told me that I couldn't do things in my life, which is why I wanted to kind of address this. So if you want to dance like Fred Astaire, like Paul does, you can just start that, and eventually maybe it does become a career and you find out a way to do that. If that's what makes you happy and that's what you want to do with your life, like there are ways and pathways and actually to create financial freedom from that if it's what makes you happy. So that's to go on. That's why there's hobbies, so we can indulge our interests and indeed fantasies without lasting damage. And I think this is one of the more damaging things, and this is that really nobody, including like people that are close to me in my life, really never believed that this would be a career and that there's no way that you can turn photography into a career. So if you're sitting in that boat and you have a lot of friends, family, and just generally people in your life, like for instance, it was me with guidance counselors, and really everybody was like, that's not a thing that you can do. That's an incredibly difficult way to make a living. And for myself, that actually put me on a different track for a little while. And because kind of as Paul goes on here to say, that if you are somebody that is actually not skilled at a thing, you should not pursue it, and you should pursue the things that you're naturally kind of skilled at. And that would mean that I would be probably a computer programmer, that I went to school for that. I spent a lot of time with computers. I would not say that that would be the happiest life for me. I feel like by chasing a life that I actually kind of wanted, and I think this goes higher level to lifestyle design, and you kind of figure out what your ideal life looks like, and you work backwards to figure out the pieces. As a computer programmer, yeah, I could probably travel and teach and do conferences, but I think traveling and making photography and traveling and doing destination weddings is a heck of a lot more fun. So that wasn't anything that anyone ever forced me to do. And if anything, everybody kind of pushed against it, and it was really just kind of shut up and get a real job. So that's kind of what I think on that. There's plenty of areas in photography like architecture and product where you can be totally introverted, but a wedding photographer often needs, apart from a camera, better chops. It gets a little bit wordy here. Basically, he's saying that you need the storefront of a huge extrovert in order to really kind of command an audience. And I think that there are, I guess, to give you tactical takeaways from this. So one, I guess like usually the hardest part for an introverted person is when you're doing family photos and there's 25, 30, 50 family members around you, and you're forced to just kind of put them all together. What I do to immediately disarm that before the wedding, so I'm not depleting, again, my kind of extroversion tank, is that I just have the couple, or I work with the couple, to make a family photo list. And I do this for a number of reasons. One, because it makes it go a heck of a lot faster. Two, because it actually gets them the photos that they want, that I can come up with, like, oh yeah, you should do a photo with your parents, you should do a photo with your mom and your dad. And I can come up with my list, but at the end of the day, if that's not what they want, pretty quickly, once I start directing the situation, they're just going to fall into whatever, like, okay, so I should do a photo with these people. Okay, great, smile, face the camera. And they won't really punch in and be like, hey, can we also do this photo if I'm taking control like that? And then at the end of the day, when I deliver the gallery, if that photo that they wanted isn't there, it kind of reflects way more on you, that like, why didn't you get this photo of me with my aunt and my third cousin and the dude that came from Vancouver for the wedding, all together at once? And it's because I don't know everyone, that it's hard to go into a space and to learn 200 people's names on a wedding day. So that is one tactical way that I help myself out, and it really does make that section of the day a heck of a lot faster. So it's variable cloudy. My camera's on auto exposure for the second time ever. So that helps me out a lot. That speeds things up. That also, I guess, the liability of it, it kind of spreads it across both myself and the couple as well. And then I also think to maybe speak to an even higher level to this, that if you are an introverted person and you're attracting your ideal client, there's a pretty good chance that a lot of your clients are also going to be very introverted human beings as well. So when you're out there photographing their wedding days, it's one, like you really get a better understanding of them, I think, as people. And two, they probably also don't want to be the person on their wedding day yelling out names. So usually it's very easy for us to just come up with like, hey, here's the 20 family photos we want. And then the other thing that I usually say in first meetings is essentially to disarm any ants coming in and trying to direct the session. Like, oh, you need this photo and this photo. It's like, it's not on the list. Wait till the end. Get it during cocktail hour. So that's kind of an out for that as well, to stop somebody from derailing the photo session and adding even more time to it. And then Paul goes on to say, never ever choose a career for which you don't have a natural aptitude. Your life will be misery. I think that this is also completely wrong. I think that I didn't grow up, I don't think anyone grows up naturally as a wedding photographer. I think that would be I don't know how you would come to a point like that, yeah, I'm just really naturally good at wedding photography. I think that all skills are learned. I think all art can be learned. So if you're in a space where you're like, oh, I just don't love my photography yet, know that if you just work at it, that's what you have to do. And I feel like there's positives and negatives definitely to being naturally gifted at something. I'm sure a lot of you saw this in school, that if you're growing up, you're in whatever the transitional period is, say you're in high school, you're going into college, all of the people that are just killing it, getting those like 100% all across the board in high school without even trying, as soon as they get to university, a lot of them just get absolutely crushed. And if you don't come from a place that you've worked hard to actually achieve the success that you've achieved, when you actually do find challenges, you get very discouraged and you find yourself in a very difficult place. So I think that there are definitely positives and negatives. I think that just putting the work in and just working hard at what you want to do, what you want that dream life to be, what you think that you'd like to, what's going to make you happy overall, I think it's a lot better to chase that and to figure out the pieces that are required to do that. And also those pieces individually have to make you happy as well. But I think that as somebody that was not naturally a good photographer at all, that it was just something I wanted to do. My background, I was a concert photographer, so I was out at concerts. I wasn't a very good musician. I started taking some photos whenever our band wasn't on stage. I started to just enjoy that. I enjoyed specifically the element of giving somebody something valuable that really encapsulated a time in their life. So for instance, somebody on stage, like people still hit me up for requests for high-res photos from way back in like 2002, 2003, 2004, of them like jumping off their bass cabs, and like it's something that you don't realize it at the time. The life really does move past that pretty quickly, and it's really a point in a lot of people's lives that nobody really documented correctly. There were a few photographers that were doing a good job. We also were very limited with gear back then as well. But to create something good that really does encapsulate that piece of somebody's life, I wasn't naturally gifted at it. I just saw that this made value for them and this made them happy. So, well, I might as well just kind of do this for a little while. And then it became fun. I got more involved with the technical of things. I've noticed that this wedding photography specifically tends to attract a lot of IT professionals for some reason. Also pilots, airline pilots. So I had my pilot's license when I was 16. I worked 80 hours a week pretty much all summer long in order to afford that. And whenever I tell people that, a lot of people are like, hey, I went to school to be an airline pilot too, and now I'm a wedding photographer. So I don't know these things. But to reverse a little bit from that, I think a lot of us either come out, I would say it's kind of a 50-50 split, maybe even more of a split on the technical end of things, that a lot of us get into photography to learn the technical, and that's fun, that's enjoyable for us. And then at some point you realize that if you want to keep buying lenses, you got to start making money at it somehow. And you look around the industry, and even when I was getting into weddings in I think 2004, 2005, I looked around the industry then, and I realized that a lot of the things that Paul has mentioned here, like architecture photography and product photography, which I also don't agree that you can be introverted to do. I feel like to be very successful at it, you need to be probably even more extroverted in those situations in order to separate yourself. And because if you're dealing, say for instance, a real estate agent, I would say most of the real estate agents I know lean on the more extroverted side, or at least they can put on that presence, and they live in that space a lot more. As an introverted person coming into that, you're going to feel a disconnect. If you come into that space and you're on their level, you're probably going to book a lot more work with them. But in 2005, 2004, I saw that the bottom was falling out of a lot of the different sectors of photography, and it was very visible with the rise of micro stock photography that just completely annihilated stock photography. And I feel like now the takeover is 90% complete. So I was kind of looking at the industry, and again, going back to that life happiness scale, that I wanted to travel. I wanted to just go out into the world and do things and have fun and kind of direct my business whatever way that I wanted. I saw that weddings were an amazing part for that they unlock nearly unlimited time freedom, I would say. That yes, you have to be here on a Saturday in the summer, but most of the time overall, you're able to kind of manage your business from wherever. So looking at my calendar and being like, okay, so I can flip my 9-to-5 job rather than being on set or something, or in coding computer wise. Being a pilot might have been fun, I think too, but there were other reasons I stopped that. But really the real push came when I realized that I could completely flip what a 9-to-5 job would be. The jobs that everyone was pushing me into, the job that I went to for co-op, and I realized like, oh, is this going to be my life? I'm just going to sit on this chair in front of a computer, and I'm going to show up at 8:30, and I'm going to leave at 5 every single day, and I'm going to make something for somebody else. And when you make something for somebody else, the downside with that is that they're eventually going to make all the money. Whereas if you're working and you're investing your time and energy and effort into your own business, you're actually like going to make money on that. And that's going to be a lifelong business. Whereas coding job, I could be fired if somebody can come by and they can do what I do for $4, even like $2 an hour less, $1 an hour less probably. If they come along, I could easily be phased out of that job. Or in computer programming specifically, like automation, I could easily be just made completely redundant. So I would have to keep learning new things and trying to stay as current as I possibly could. All of that sounds fine. It doesn't sound like getting to go on safari in Africa with your friends or go to Antarctica or whatever. So I preferred that. That was what I aspired to. I was fortunate enough to spend about, I would say, 7 years to make that happen. So that was 7 years from the time that I decided that I really wanted to be a wedding photographer until I was able to really travel almost as much as I wanted. And then as of a couple of years ago, like working with Nikon and everything, really kind of ramped that up even more. So I don't think my life is misery by not doing something that was not my natural aptitude. I would say that I am quite happy overall with my life, that I get to really do kind of anything that I want, and I get to follow the opportunities that I actually want to do. That if I want to do a show with Nikon, I can do that. If I want to do a portrait series with the government of Canada, I can do that. That you can just kind of find your own opportunities, and don't listen to people when they say that you can't do things, because you can just find different ways to do it if you do think that it fits into your overall kind of life happiness. So Paul's now responding to another person that was kind of like, yo, Paul, weird comments. I don't know if I agree. So Paul says, Antonio, it doesn't matter what your trade is, plumber, doctor, cabbie, astronaut. We don't need any more that don't have a natural flair for their trade. We know. So again, back to the natural flair, like how do you develop natural flair? You do a thing a bunch and then you get good at it. I think that all skills can be learned, that if you're relying on what you're good at and what you're naturally good at, I feel like we'd all be very good at sitting on the couch. Some of us would be pretty good at playing video games, but again, that's a learned skill through your childhood. If you're playing that Sega Genesis, you're playing that N64, you're playing with that GameCube or Xbox if you're 16 and watching this right now, that there are ways to cultivate those skills, and to rely just on what you've accidentally learned through your life is not really going to be a direction of happiness. And if anything, you're going to feel a lot more out of control, I think, when you actually get to a point where you're like 40 years old or 50 or 60 or whatever it might be, that if you've just let life choose your own direction and that you really haven't had a whole lot of input in that, it's going to put you in a much worse place than right now if you're just kind of focused on like, oh cool, this is what I would like to be doing. How do I figure out, how do I get to that point? We all know when we hire someone who's not really cut out for it. A medical profession, for instance, is rife for people that are really bright and ambitious, but just don't have that particular aptitude, but have been attracted to profession for its esteem. So basically, if you want to be a doctor and you're not bright and ambitious, you should not be a doctor. So Paul says don't. As Mr. Eastwood says, a man has to know his limitations. I'm not sure where that quote's from. I think it's from Dirty Harry. So I think it's a character that Mr. Eastwood is playing. So I don't think it's actually him saying the quote. It's whoever wrote that quote for him. But I think it is important to know your limitations, but also to just hire people whenever, like if you're not good, you don't want to do your accounting, you can hire somebody to do that. You can focus on the things that you want to be doing and figure out the pieces you need to put in place again to make that dream life happen. I think that it is important that if you're aiming to create that life that you really do aspire to be part of, that to find people that are going to either help you on the way. And kind of what it is, and what I found it to be, was that for instance, I outsource my editing and my post-production, and I do that because I'm buying my time back, that I can better invest that time in things that will make me happier, and also things that will generate potentially more income. So rather than sitting behind a computer, I shoot a wedding. That takes me maybe 10, 15 hours in post-production. So when I outsource, what I'm doing essentially is I'm buying my time back, that I have somebody else doing the 10, 15 hours, whatever it might be in post-production to finalize that. And I'm gonna use those 10, 15 hours to either do the things that I enjoy with my life and maybe start a new hobby. I don't have any hobbies outside of, all my hobbies are my jobs now, I guess, but they're all still a heck of a lot of fun. So I'm not too upset about that overall. But by buying that time back, you can invest that into marketing hours. You can book more weddings if you want to book more weddings. You can pursue other work. You can email every single car company in Canada and try to do a deal with them, which it does actually work somehow, that you can just reach out to people. And if you're on the YouTube a lot and you watch a lot of Peter McKinnon, you'll know his struggle trying to get a Ford sponsorship. I think it's important that if you dial in and you're just only on Ford and they just don't have a program that can do that, I do think it's insane that he promotes them in every single video, that they haven't given him money, or if they have, maybe it's secret. I don't think we have to disclose things in Canada. But if you go outside of that, there are a lot of companies that are instantly willing to talk to you and do something like Volvo or Toyota Canada. Like there's people that are very excited to create content with you. So don't just stop at kind of the first door, that if that's like, that didn't work, I'm giving up. That no, just go a little bit wider and figure out kind of where all the pieces come into play. By outsourcing my post-production, that unlocks my ability to go out and do that and to create these new opportunities for myself, which I think are incredibly important. 2 Paul's next. I think this is the last. There's 2 more. All right, I'll give you the highlights of this one. I've had photographic assistants, various film crew, and post-production people such as animators, editors. I looked for him on IMDb. I can't find him, so I don't know if this is real or not. Those roles suit introverts perfectly, so I guess we're supposed to be animators, editors, post-production crew. I would, like, just thinking about the people that come to my mind as an introverted, even an introverted director, which I feel like goes against, would very much make Paul upset. Woody Allen. I feel like he came from writing. I feel like he's a very introverted person. On set, I feel like, again, you learn the skills that you need to be able to communicate with people, and you figure out how to build what you want to build within kind of the skills that you have. And I feel like you do that in a different way. And I feel like you also, kind of going back to ideal clients, when you're creating work for ideal clients, you're creating something and you actually understand them on a better level. So if you're an introverted director, you're probably going to create a lot of films that really connect heavily, or if you're an introverted writer especially, you're going to create a lot of films that really connect with that audience. So I think it's important for all people across the board to create art, and I think that it's important overall. So that's kind of my take on that. I would also say that if you are an introverted person, I don't know, I'm not personally friends with Sofia Coppola, but I would say a movie like Lost in Translation, there's a pretty good chance that that movie came from a lot of introverts all coming together, and I think it's one of the greatest films ever made. Something like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I feel like, is from the wild and crazy, almost near schizophrenic mind of Kaufman. I feel like a lot of introverted minds came together to make that, and even a film like Before Sunset or Before Sunrise or before whatever the third one was, I saw it, I didn't love the third one. But I feel like that film, obviously, it hired people that were extroverted in order to play the roles, but I feel like that came from a lot of introverted people all working together to create something that really did resonate, I feel, with a lot of people that really are kind of on the more introverted level of things. So I would say there is value and there's overlooked value in creating work if you are an introverted person for your ideal audience or for your ideal couples if you're in the wedding space. To go on, how a wedding photographer is something of a director or motivator, as well as often hold the attention of many people and project a certain authority. Not for the introverted. In fact, my wedding photography experience very early in my career served me very, very well later when I became a director and needed to lead a large crew. So again, bringing it back to the wedding space and thinking of my ideal clients, that if they hired me and I was very much an extroverted, like very authoritative leader that was constantly in that space, I feel like there would be a very heavy disconnect with the couples that I actually enjoy working with. I would likely probably find myself in different weddings. I would find myself at like photographing weddings for more extroverted people, and what that would mean is just that I'm doing the same work just in a different environment, which is totally fine. Again, I think that this is pretty much incorrect, that most of the wedding photography day really does pride itself to motorcycle break. Get a lot of those here. Not as many as in Thailand probably, but we still get a few. All right, to close it off here, one more comment, and then I'm going to give you a few actionable things, and then I'm actually gonna play for you that video that has been lost in the YouTube depths, and I feel like it is cool to watch. So hopefully you get some value from that. Paul says, I'm just saying to choose the job that suits you. I've had nearly 45 years in this business and have had some really horrible consequences from people in jobs that are a bad fit. Nothing to do with ego, it's just truth, however much you don't like it. Also, it's not really whether you can manage a role, it's whether you excel, or really not much point. And to excel, you need everything working for you. Again, going back to the fact that you can just learn all the skills that you need, that if I wanted to learn how to be a Hollywood director, I could probably just put in the the work and figure out how to do that. And for the first little bit, kind of like weddings, that I would leave and I would be completely exhausted mentally as well as physically. And I'm sure that you'd go through that growing stage and you'd create some work, but you'd figure out how to create work in a different way that really resonates with your ideal couple, or in that case, an ideal audience. So I think that if you are an introverted person and you're interested in getting into this industry, I think that you should not put limitations on your life, or you should not let the Pauls of the world put limitations on your life. I think that you should always aspire to whatever that dream life, that happy life is that you'd like to achieve. I feel like that is the key in finding the pieces to kind of put into the work there. Another thing that I found that's kind of an actionable thing is that I've found my happy place at 85 millimeters, my lens. This is an actual gear tip. I found that if I'm on an 85, that's kind of the perfect distance for me, that I feel like I can communicate with people from that. I feel like there's a bit of a barrier and I don't deplete my mental tank as fast as I possibly can. I think it's also important to do a lot of work before you actually end up working with clients, to get a lot of friends and people that you kind of, at least friends of friends, people that you kind of know out there, and working with them to begin with, in order to just kind of get at least some sort of pace and flow to your work before you end up with actual clients. And again, to mention the family photo list, so in the initial meeting or in one of the emails, just asked and figure out a way to work together to create a family photo list, so that you can just give that a copy to me, and then also a copy to somebody who knows who everyone is, or that can be a second photographer, or that can be a wedding planner, or that can be a wedding planner assistant, whatever that is, that if you can pass that responsibility off, that you can focus on actually doing the photography and making sure everything's looking good in there. And not worrying about depleting your mental tank by yelling out names. That you really don't need to be doing that in order to command attention. I feel like people understand that if they're standing there waiting for family photos, there's a photographer, we should look at the photographer. I feel like people, I put a lot of faith in people, I guess, but I feel like people, they understand that process. And when you're out with, I guess maybe one of the last tips is to go out with smaller groups. And the way that I kind of structure my days is that I begin with, so this is kind of the family photo / wedding party / couples photo time. So I begin with everybody from the family. So we get all that done. I have somebody else calling out names. I have a wedding planner assistant, or I have my second photographer, or I have a family friend, a cousin, somebody who actually knows who all the individual members are. I have them helping me out with that. We then go to wedding parties, and because I'm introverted, my ideal client that naturally kind of connects with me is usually introverted, which means they're probably going to have a smaller wedding party overall. So maybe it's rare for me to see more than 8 people, I would say, total, maybe even 6 people, 4 people. A lot of the time I'm seeing mostly best mans, maids of honor, and then siblings. So however that math works out, I feel like it's awesome, because I don't have to deal with 45 people in a wedding party. And I do feel like a naturally extroverted couple will probably have a lot more of that style of friends. So that's going to be a very difficult place for you to find yourself in. So as somebody, again, attracting my ideal couples, there's a lot on TaylorJacksonCourses.com if you're interested about how to attract your ideal couples and how to book those weddings. That I feel like if you're working those weddings and you're working with the people that are essentially just your friends that you haven't met yet, you can create a lot of really, really great, incredible work in a way that's easy for you, and in a way that an extroverted personality put into the same role, they wouldn't get the same images, they wouldn't have the same level of realness. So I really do think that there are different weddings for different individuals. Let's see if I have anything else on my list here. Throw to oversaturated. So this is episode number 1 of a show that didn't really get seen by anyone and didn't really get promoted by anyone, including myself, and I just kind of let it die. But I feel like it's a good episode, and I hope that you get value from it. And thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. This video got a little bit longer than I anticipated it being. Hopefully you enjoyed, and if you are interested, TaylorJacksonCourses.com, sign up over there and get access to all of my content that I've ever made as far as wedding photography courses. And you can live all of your wildest dreams. It takes work, but it really is if you can picture what life you want, and you can figure out all the elements that would go into that. Again, everything's it's going to change. It's going to move a little bit, but if you know kind of the goal that you're going towards. For me personally, it was a life of time freedom, and also the ability to travel and to use the skills that I've learned in order to make value for people, so that they can either fly me somewhere, or I can create value on site for a different brand. And that is all stuff that did not come naturally. So sorry, Paul. But I worked at it over many years. It took me a long time to get to a point that I was pretty happy with my skills. And every single day I learn new stuff, and I get a little bit better. And I look back at videos that I made, or photos that I included in videos a couple of years ago, and I'm like, wow, that's a weird crop. Probably wouldn't post that photo if I was doing that video now, or editing styles or whatever it might be. So you're always learning. So don't worry too much if somebody's telling you can't do a thing. You don't need anyone's permission. Alexis Ohanian's book, Without Their Permission, How the 21st Century Will Be Made, Not Managed. I read it. I think that the synopsis of it is that you don't need anyone's permission to go out and do the things that you want to do. And that there are going to be gatekeepers and people trying to not let you achieve their dreams, and that's because they have not yet achieved their dreams, or they don't believe it's possible, or there's some underlying programming in their brain that really does make them truly believe that you cannot do whatever you want and really create a life that you actually want to live. So yeah, go out, learn, keep learning. You're on YouTube, you've made it through this video, so you're obviously quite committed to learning overall. Thanks for hanging out with me, and hopefully you got something from this, and hopefully maybe at the very least you just realize that not everyone in the wedding photography industry is extroverted, even though a lot of the instructors on YouTube and on Creative Live, and I feel like there's all really extroverted elements of educators for the most part. So don't believe that that's the whole industry and that's what you need to be. That while I love and I look up to Jerry Jonas quite a lot, and I would say Jerry also is quite an introverted human being when he's not with a camera. So people maybe are deceiving. I feel like there's a lot more introverts in this industry than anyone realizes, and I would say that it is quite an overwhelming majority of the. If we did a personality test, maybe that's a thing I'll do in the future. I'll do a personality test on like 1,000 different people in the industry, and I would suspect that 80% of them are probably going to be introverted, at least just from the people that I've met in my 15 years as a wedding photographer. So thanks for being here, and here comes the episode of Oversaturated. Whoop-ha. Smack the lip, get pitted. Thanks for tuning into the pilot episode of this new show. This is a test to see if you'd be into a show like this. If you like it, drop a comment down below. I'll make it a regular thing. If not, that's cool too. Just let me know. Welcome to episode 1 of Oversaturated.
I'm a strong introvert. This is uncomfortable. I was kidding. I know you, so it's not bad.
I'm Taylor Jackson, and this is Oversaturated, a show about marketing, business, and standing out as a creative entrepreneur in an oversaturated market.
But yeah, I'm a strong introvert. So weeks I should show you my calendar. My day-to-day is a series of meetings with strangers in 30-minute increments. There's 22 of them. And this is just my day, and I find these days super exhausting, especially when I have to interface with large groups of people or do big presentations. It's absolutely insanely tiring. So I need to recharge, and to do that, generally I go home and I sit on the toilet. I'm not even lying to you. I'm not even doing anything. I'm just sitting there because it's a comfortable, quiet place where nobody can reach me. I'm blushing because it's a very honest admission. I'm an introvert.
A few years ago, Michael, Donna, and our resident Matt Damon lookalike, Mike McCauley, traveled to the most introverted place on Earth, Antarctica, where we met many other animals that were actually a lot more social than us. Donna was writing her book. Mike McCauley had just started dating his now longtime girlfriend, Shalena, and Mike, well, we think he was there just to drift rental cars on mountain passes in Patagonia. Travel is one of the ways that I recharge as an introvert. Even though on the surface it feels like you're surrounded by people, it's where I actually feel the most myself. In this case, I find calmness in the fact that everyone on this ship is part of the same journey, and we have something very easy and remarkable in common. In situations like this, I don't feel forced about small talk or interactions that drain and deplete all of my mental resources. I think I chose photography as a career because it allows me to be in and document social situations without having to be continuously active in them. I have a camera to hide behind and a task to do, a reason to be there. Even with travel, I always travel with a purpose. I'm really bad at just relaxing, and it actually gets me more stressed out if I'm not able to do work that benefits my future every single day. For a long time, I struggled very hard with being an introvert. I felt that to get to the next level in business and in life that I had to be a Vinny Chase from Entourage or a Richard Branson with a larger-than-life personality, but you don't. It's taken me years to become okay with being quiet and realize it's actually where I am the happiest. Can you learn to change your personality to be an extrovert? I don't know, but I do know that I can do it in short bursts now.
I think extroversion is a learned tactic. I don't know if introversion can be learned. by an extrovert. So I think you're kind of better off to be an introvert from what I understand. The way I prepare for the day is I get up at 5:30 and I like visualize my day. I look at my calendar and I think about all the meetings and all the conversations I'm going to have, and I visualize what they're going to look like. And if there's any anxiety, I prepare myself accordingly. That's how I've learned to manage it. And in that morning between 5 and say 7:30, I'm waking up, I'm getting cleaned up, I'm sitting in my little quiet place. I walk the dog, I have a coffee. My wife Donna's around. She's also an introvert, but she's also an entrepreneur. And so we have a ton of empathy and compassion for what each other is going through. And I find that really sets me up nicely. And then in the evening, I try to do the same thing. What I find in the evenings is to do the 5 a.m. thing really well, you gotta be in bed by like 10:30 or else you're gonna start to run yourself pretty ragged at both ends. And my day often, like I have a meeting from 9 to 9:30 tonight. It's a call because we do a lot of business on the West Coast. And so in that like half hour before bed, I just like really try to be with myself, with Donna, with the dog, with the cat, and have no external interactions whatsoever.
As creatives and entrepreneurs, we find our voices in many different places. Here in Antarctica, we have fully immersed ourselves in the experience of being here and figuring out what story it is we want to document. As with all projects, we try our best to go in with no preconceived ideas of what this documentary is going to become. We know that we're going to be building the framework as we go, which is scary, but it's one of the reasons that I love creating this style of content. Every project feels completely different. It's so easy as a shy, quiet human to get discouraged when you watch or listen to other entrepreneurs online. Everyone seems so polished and professional. It takes years to get there and make it feel natural if you're introverted. So don't stress out if you're not there yet. Work out what you want to be doing every single day. Not everyone is going to support you or care about your journey, and this includes your close circle of friends and family, and that actually hurts a lot. So we have to learn to work in a vacuum with not a lot of outside voices coming in. I feel as an introvert, this is the place where I can actually learn the quickest. So I've reframed that lack of feedback and social acceptance as something that makes me work harder and faster. You're using what a lot would consider to be a negative to fuel you rather than upset you. And over the past 10 years, I've made about 1,000 videos and most of them suck. I couldn't speak in front of a camera when I started out, but I knew that it's something that I wanted to do in my life, so I just worked at it every single day. I've found the things that help me create better content and better art, like writing all of these words first rather than just trying to wing it. I'm not good at winging it and I know that, so I have to do it a different way. A way that all of the extroverted YouTubers would never have taught me. And well, I do look up to people that are natural extroverts. I know that they're often the loudest, and I don't need to take all of their advice as truth to me. The challenge is that most of the educational content out there online is from extroverted people. So spend the time, figure out what pieces work for you, and when in doubt, find your quiet place and recharge.
You know what's actually really funny about the toilet thing? Just to express my level of introversion, on the first day of grade 9, I went to a high school where a lot of my classmates kind of got into trouble over the summer. And in fact, of my graduating class of grade school, only 5 or 6 finished high school. And so I got to high school and all these guys, my friends, were like super, super cool, and they're on different lunches. And so I had nobody to eat lunch with. And so I started by walking the halls, and I had my lunch, and I didn't want to be that like guy eating his lunch in the hallways. So I went into a bathroom stall and I lifted my feet and I ate my lunch sitting on the toilet in the bathroom stall, because the big groups of people, strangers, like it just wasn't me. And then I met a group of guys that would crawl the hallways at lunch, like a group of introverts looking for pennies. We would collect this like big treasure box full of pennies. Brian Dan Paul was the leader of that pack. And slowly I like made my way into the school cafeteria at lunch, but the toilet has always been my safe place. I've never told anybody that story. Donna knows that story. Yeah. And I think I told it I was valedictorian, and I think I told that in my speech. That was also a terrifying moment for an introvert, but yeah, you can learn to be an extrovert when you need to. You learn your coping mechanisms. For me, it's like preparation. I just need to be prepared. I bet there's like probably like millions of introverts in the world that'll be like sitting on the toilet watching this video being like, oh my God, like I'm not the only one. Because why would an introvert tell another introvert that they use the toilet as like their sacred place?